Okay, so today I'm going to be presenting on navigating senior living in Ottawa. And so we're going to talk today about a few things. So the first thing we'll kind of go through is making a plan. We'll talk about kind of that first option that a lot of people have in mind, aging at home. We'll then talk about some independent living options here in Ottawa specifically. We'll talk about retirement homes and long-term care, what they look like in Ontario, and then I'll give you guys an update on what things look like now with COVID, because I know that's something, new reality for us. So again, I had Darlene gave us a great introduction of who Solva is. So I'll just give you another quick overview. So Solva Senior Living, we've been around for about 7 years now. And we're here to provide retirement home search assistance, but we're also really big into education and providing our clients with resources so that they can make good decisions. We're here to help navigate. We can provide referrals to different services that you might need, and always here for support and advocacy. Our services are free. The retirement home search service is free. And how that kind of works is we're like brokers. So the retirement homes actually cover the cost. We try to stay as unbiased as possible, and none of our advisors make commission. And so we try to be as independent as possible for you guys. So we're going to start off today by kind of taking a poll. So I want to know what everyone knows about navigating senior living in Ottawa. So Erin's going to pop up a poll. It's our first time doing it. So I'm not sure if I'm going to see it. Oh, there. It's popped up on my screen, so it should pop up on everyone's. And I just want to know, how much do you currently know? Have you never looked at it before? Is this the first time you're hearing about it? Maybe you started looking into it, did a little bit of a Google search. Maybe you kind of are entrenched in it. You helped a family member or friend navigate it, or even listened to them as they went through that. Or maybe you've navigated it yourself. So we'll give it another kind of few seconds for everyone to vote. And it seems so far we have a lot of people learning for the first time, which is awesome. A few people have helped family members or friends, kind of a split between kind of started looking. Wonderful. Okay, so I think we got some answers. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So it looks like most of us are kind of new to this. So with that in mind, I'll go into some detail about everything, but if you have further questions, go ahead and ask me at the end. So thank you so much, Erin, and you can close the poll now. So I'm going to first start off. It's very confusing kind of navigating senior living if anyone who said they have done it before. I think the best place to always start is kind of making a plan and understanding how to navigate it and kind of the various options. So this plan might not be yours by any means, but this is kind of generally what most people I talk to, what their plans are. So usually people, they say plan A, I want to stay in the current house I'm in, right? That's most of our plan is to stay at home at least as long as possible. Plan B, relocate, downsize, maybe move into something that's more accessible, maybe move into something that's less work. And then plan C for a lot of people is that future elder care or needing more assistance. So I just want to let everyone know, kind of a quick plug, we do have a free download on our website for a book that walks you through all those plans and kind of just goes into a little bit more detail. It's just on our website, solvaseniorliving.ca, if you want to download it. So I'll start off with the emotions of aging. So something you might be feeling yourself, you may have experienced someone else. Aging is something that's inevitable for most of us, almost all of us. And with aging, it's change. A lot of change is happening for us, and a lot of change we don't necessarily want. Our bodies are changing, our minds are changing, and a lot of times I meet seniors who say, why does anything have to change, right? What my life up to now has been amazing, or it's been good, and I don't want to change, especially I don't want to change my living situation. And then again, another thing is I hear a lot is how do I change? What is kind of the things I need to do to change? A lot of times it's a lot of work. And then most of us are quite resistant to change. And the other thing is that from our children, what do my children think of the change? A lot of times we hear from people saying, my kids want this for me. And all these kind of questions are going through our heads, and we're in a society where aging is not necessarily what we desire to be. We have anti-aging this, anti-aging that, and it's not looked as a good thing to be aging, which I think is totally backwards. We should definitely think that's a bigger conversation to have. But there's also a lot of negative things around senior living and having to move somewhere where you need assistance. You'll hear people say, I'm a burden on the system. That I actually just saw something today that came through my inbox that said, stay at home so you check on your loved ones so your aging parents don't have to go to a care facility, which it makes a very negative thing that if you have to move to a care facility, it means that something is wrong. And it's just kind of something to think about, our feelings around aging. And the first thing that we'll talk about is that staying at home. So if anyone listened to Christine, who presented, she was from Solva Senior Living, she presented a few weeks ago for you guys on how to age at home. She went through a whole presentation. I'm going to kind of just lightly touch on it so you guys have an idea how to make that option work. So the first thing we look at is why someone might fail to cope at home. So there's a lot of factors going on, and a breakdown in any one of these, it could be just one, can lead to a need to move. So with that, social support. This year, now more than ever, right? Everyone, you're not allowed to have people over. It's actually like not allowed. And a lot of it has moved online, and a lot of people struggle with online, using Zoom. So staying connected socially is one of the things that, if you're at home and you're living on your own, that's a big one. The next one is home accessibility. So your ability to get in and out of your house, and your ability to move around your house as well. Things like, is your bathroom accessible? Is it a bathtub? Can you get into the bathtub? Do you have steps up to your house? And the next one is proper nutrition. Proper nutrition is so many factors. Just think about all the steps that go into eating every day. We have to first get the food. Then we have to, if it wasn't ordered and prepared for us, we have to prepare it. And then you have to eat it. And so this one actually, as well, is something to consider for someone who had someone else preparing and buying and managing their food their whole life, and then all of a sudden they're on their own doing that. We see this a lot of times when a wife passes away and the husband is left to try and take over his nutrition for the first time. Another big one is medication. Medication. If anyone takes medication, you know it's all about the right dose at the right time the right amount. A lot it goes into our medication, and forgetting doses or not managing it properly can lead to a lot of other really bad side effects. The other thing is our actual physical health, whether we need someone else to help us with that physical health, whether we need monitoring or assistance with our daily activities. And the other thing is what happens if something happens to me. So it's when we talk about an emergency. If you're in your house alone, in a case of an emergency, do you have something set in place so that someone will find you or you can access help? So all of that said, it doesn't mean that if one of those fails that, okay, I have to move. It just means you have to react and bring services in or modify your lifestyle so that you're taking care of one of those reasons you failed to cope at home, and so that you can be successful at home. So some things to consider is when we talk about nutrition, meal services or grocery delivery. I used to talk about this saying grocery delivery is getting better. Now that it's with the last year that's happened, these meal deliveries, grocery deliveries have gotten so much better. So those kind of reduce that barrier of having to go to the grocery store, having to prepare it. Another one is to maintain your physical health, keep moving. Movement can be anything. It can be gardening. It can be walking up and down your stairs several times a day. And it can be doing scheduled physical activity. It can also be as simple as walking around the block. When it comes to home accessibility, that renovations and modifying your home, you want to do it early. It's not something that happens as an after fact. If anyone's ever gone through any renovations, a lot of steps involved, a lot of work. So if you do it early and you prepare for the future, then you're more likely to be successful aging at home. Being aware of medication management. So that's something you can talk to your pharmacist about, because pharmacies have wonderful systems now. There's dose sets, there's little packages that will say the time you have to take your medication. So just ask what kind of services are available for you. Having emergency support in place, whether that's an emergency pendant, whether it's carrying a cell phone on you, whether it's having someone check in on you, but making sure that you don't go several days without someone checking in on you. And then the last one is the biggest one at any point in our life, is having that sense of purpose, having a reason to get up in the morning. And that a lot of the times can come from a lot of activities that right now are halted, things like volunteering, visiting with family. So now more than ever is a time to kind of self-reflect and figure out ways to have a sense of purpose in the new kind of online world, I guess you can say, or how you can safely do it out in your community. So again, it's about planning ahead. So if you want to stay at home as long as possible or even forever, you need to do that research before you need it. So a lot of the time services, you need to know how to access them. You need to know kind of whether they have a wait list or not, especially if you're seeking funded services that are available through the government, such as through the city of Ottawa or through the provincial government. Knowing ahead of time, researching what those services are, can be very helpful, because when you need it, if you need it in an emergency, you often won't get it. It's definitely one that you have to plan ahead for. And then again, renovating early. And also another huge one is understanding what your current finances are and then what you can afford in the future. And how our system works, like many things, the more you can afford, the more you have access to. Because when it comes to assisted living, if you can afford a whole bunch, then you can get those services usually immediately. where if you're relying on subsidies, it's often a lot longer process. Another thing is to think about a move is not a fail. If plan A was to stay at home and something comes up and you have to move, it doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you're starting to look at another plan and that you're moving on to the next step. And I think it's important to realize that early rather than late, and to see a move as not something that's okay, I've given up, I'm moving now, whatever, I'm useless. It's no, you can move into somewhere that will provide more assistance, and that more assistance can provide you with more autonomy. And I'll kind of explain that a little bit later. Moving social isolation, if you're kind of recognizing that you're kind of caught in that loop of, okay, I'm going to stay in my pajamas today. I don't really have any plans. I'm not really talking to anyone. Okay, one day turns into 2 days turns into a week, into a month, and you're not connecting with anyone on a regular basis. That's when you gotta need to realize, okay, I'm pretty isolated. And a move to somewhere that has social activities can be very helpful. And if your house can't be renovated, or you don't want to renovate it for accessibility, it's another kind of good time to think about a move. So, okay, we're thinking about a move. What are the options right now in Ottawa? So, I mean, there's options definitely for both purchase and for rental. And that's when a conversation about your finances also becomes important. So purchasing, you have lots of different options, and this is where a real estate agent can help you a lot more. There's bungalows, there's accessible bungalows, there's moving to a smaller home, moving to a condo. A condo and smaller home, less work to maintain. Condos are also usually more accessible because you have an elevator. And the other trend we're starting to see is active adult communities. So these are communities built for people who are interested in an active adult lifestyle. So usually these houses are bungalows, and they're usually more accessible. There's no rules that kids can't live in these areas, but usually because of the way the house is set up and the neighborhood set up, it doesn't attract families with kids. So it's usually people who are also looking for that same lifestyle. And there's usually some activities that are planned out within that community. I know, for example, there's one in Riverside South. There's also one in Amberwood or Amberside, I don't remember. And there's a community center, so it's the hub of the neighborhood. So it gives that social aspect, but still the independence of ownership. Next, there's kind of a bunch of different independent living options, and we'll go into each one of these. And then there's as well assisted living options, and then these will go into even greater detail. So let's start off with coach houses and in-law suites. So coach houses are a newer trend, and they're just little small accessible houses that are on someone else's property. So it's almost like a very fancy shed. Now, I just did a quick search, and I have no relation to this company, but EcoBuild, they build apparently small coach houses in Ottawa. Bylaws do allow these houses on some properties. So it's a great option if you want to, say, live on a family member's property, or you want to live on a friend's property so that you have that kind of social close by, someone checking in on you, but then you have your own space. In-law suites also are have been quite popular, and that's when you live in part of someone's house, whether it's the basement, it can sometimes be on the main floor. One thing to watch out is, yes, if it's in the basement, there's usually stairs if it's not a walkout, and that can lead to inaccessibility. There's supportive living options as well. So supportive living, you'll see things like the Briere Village. there's a few others in Ottawa, and these are often rent geared to income or market rate. So they are more affordable options, and they can look like anything from a self-contained apartment to a shared house. And often what these places have is they have support staff on site. Now, that support staff is not a nursing staff, so they're not going to provide care for you necessarily, but that support staff is there to answer your questions such as, oh, I need my dishwasher fixed, or you say, oh, I need help going out to get groceries. So they're there kind of to provide that light support. Rather than, oh, I need assistance with a shower. They wouldn't provide that kind of support. Now, these are rent geared to income and market rate ones, and there often is quite a wait list to get into any of them. Some newer trends we're starting to see is that active adult communities, but more in apartment style now. There's one out in Stittsville called the Wellings of Stittsville. That's what the picture is on my screen. There's also one in Barhaven, the Bristol. It's also, you might hear Waterford is kind of their sister, like the retirement home that's attached. Now, these communities are interesting. So they are usually self-contained apartments, and they have services there available. So they have gym, maybe a restaurant, and those services are usually included in the rent or maybe a little bit extra. As well, these places have staff on site, not nursing staff. Again, it's more of restaurant staff, gym staff, a front desk person, things like that. And these can be quite attractive to someone who is looking for that lifestyle with a lot of social activities and a lot of people around. So you have your own apartment, but then you can go to the other spaces and be social. There's also the bungalow and townhomes. I touched on just a little bit while ago that, again, they're self-contained houses. They're usually for purchase. I think there are a few rental options. There's one out in Winchester. It's, again, Wellings out in Winchester that provides a rental option. But they're self-contained houses, and you usually have your property maintenance provided for you, as well as that social aspect where you can go to a community center. Now, the difference between an apartment is on a really cold winter day, you go down to the activity area or down to the restaurant, you don't have to go outside. Bungalows and townhomes, you have to still go outside. So it's not as much interaction socially in the winter per se. So if you are someone who doesn't like the winter as much, you might want to consider the apartments rather than the bungalows or townhomes. Now I'm going to go into retirement residences. So these are retirement homes, long-term care. We hear about these a lot in the news. There's a lot of kind of things going around. So we're going to kind of go into the more information, so you have that information and you can make informed decisions. Now, all of the information I share with you is also all available online, and I can direct you to the organizations that control these places. So I have a list of frequently asked questions, and we're going to go through each one. Now, there might be more questions that come up, and I'm happy to answer them at the end. So the first thing is, who owns retirement residences? So they're privately owned, especially mainly in Ottawa as well. There are some that are not for profit. If you think of Unitarian House, if anyone is familiar with them. There's some of them that are publicly traded. So Rivera, Chartwell, Sienna, they are all publicly traded companies as well. There are over 90 in Ottawa, with more being built every day. I think every time I blink, there's a new one popping up on a corner. So there's a ton of them in Ottawa, a ton of different options. And you'll see that there are some that are privately owned by just one person owns that one home. And then there's a chain. There's like anything, there's chain ones, the names I said, Rivera, Chartwell, Riverstone. Those are more of a chain of homes. The governing body. So who looks after these places and makes sure that things are running well? So there's actually two. So your first one is the Residential Tenancy Act. So if anyone's ever rented before, you are probably pretty familiar with this act, or if you are a landlord. And this act is that relationship between the landlord and tenant. So when you move into a retirement home, you are a tenant. What this act says, though, it's specifically, they have specific guidelines for care homes, they call them, which is a retirement home, where they indicate that a care home is only ever a month-to-month lease. So you can't make someone sign a 10-year lease or a 1-year lease. It's always month-to-month. This also dictates what your rights are as a tenant. And as well, they also indicate that there's a medical disability tax credit. So when you move into a retirement home, that you do get a tax credit for living there. The second one that governs them is the Retirement Home Act. So this act has been put in place to protect the resident, not the retirement home. So the resident and the family. So the Retirement Home Act will lay out residents' rights. They also monitor these homes. So they go in and inspect. They make sure that they're following all the rules. And then they also report what their findings are publicly. Now you can find these reports on the RHRA's website. So it's rhra.ca. And it's and so there's good and bad things about the Retirement Home Act. Yes, they're there to protect. They don't dig very deep, though. They just want to see that there's policies and things in place, but they don't necessarily read what the policies say, per se. Going back, so the RHRA says what residents' rights are. And so what are these rights? So they list out a 10 rights. Now I've only put 3 on here, but there is quite a few more. I just wanted to highlight these ones. So live with dignity in a safe and clean environment. Know what care services are being provided and their cost. And fully participate in care planning and decision making about care. So those ones are super important because you, as a resident, you're moving into a retirement home. It's privately owned. You have a right to know what care you're receiving, when you're receiving it, and how much it costs. And you have a right to decline that care. You have a right to request more. And that's something really important to know. You don't have to just accept what they say. You can have an opinion and you have full right to have control over that. And your decision maker, so if you can't make that decision yourself, your power of care gets to see all that stuff as well. So they set standards for care services. So they say how drugs can be administered, assistance with being. So what they actually say with these care services is that if you say you're going to give a care service, you have to give it. If someone says that they do dementia care, they have to show that they actually can do dementia care. The other thing is the safety of the residents in the home. So this is where we're looking at building maintenance, a huge one with COVID, infection prevention and control. So the RHRA actually was the ones who set out guidelines to retirement homes on how to react as COVID progresses. They set out to what the rules are for residents interacting with each other, staff entering rooms, the protective equipment that must be worn. The other one is they also make sure that retirement homes have safety plans for things like a fire. The fire department also mandates that, but the Retirement Home Act says that they have to practice these evacuations. They have to have a plan for what happens if there is a fire and the residents can't come back. So it's a retirement home of 180 people. Where are they going to go? So the act sets all this out, and the other one is consumer protection provided by the retirement home. So knowing that the act says that they have to have these, when you're going, if you're ever looking for a retirement home, you can ask to see these, and you can ask them about these. If they aren't willing to show you it or provide you that information, I would be pretty hesitant about choosing that place, because the RHRA is inspecting these places, and it should be always up to date, and then they should always know their procedures and have these things all in place. If they don't, then it's probably something big going on at that place. So the next thing is, what do they offer? So retirement residence, it's communal living. So you have your own space. So you have either like a 1-bedroom, a studio. Usually you have your own bathroom. But then there's a communal space to eat meals. There's a communal space for activities. So just in that in itself, having to go down for a meal and eating with other people provides so much social, right? We always like to break bread with someone else. So you're going to get that social life being there. Nutrition. So you're going down to a dining room for 3 meals a day. They're also providing snacks. So there is your nutrition being taken care of. They also can take it to the next step where they can monitor your nutrition if needed, and then work with that. So say if you have a loved one that's moving into a retirement home and you're worried about how much they eat, whether they're not getting enough, then they can actually monitor that. They provide also a safety and support. So there's staff around. There's nursing staff, there's activity staff, there's always staff around 24/7 at all retirement homes. So there's always someone there in case of emergency. The other thing is physical activity. So most places will have will bring in physical activity, and they'll also so there is free physical activity classes provided by your local health integration network that will come into retirement homes. And then there's also other kind of specialty classes like yoga, chair exercises. The other thing is, a lot of these places will offer a continuum of care. So if you're not needing very much support when you move in, they do offer quite a lot of services. So as you need more help, you don't necessarily have to move. They can provide more care. They can provide assistance with your daily living, and then again, security. So a lot of these places will have a receptionist at the front. So it's not just anyone off the street walking in. So it gives you kind of that little extra sense of security. So how much do they cost? Okay, this one is the most often asked. This is the best thing to kind of know when you're starting to plan for them. But retirement residents are so different every place you go, how much they cost. There's such a range. One thing to note is, usually when you're paying more for a residence, you're paying for staffing. So you'll often see a higher number of staff at a place that you're paying more for. You also are usually paying per size of the room. So there's usually a number amount per square feet. And you're also usually paying for the kind of fanciness of it. So if there's chandeliers and that beautiful hardwood floor, you're usually paying for that. So these ranges that I have on my screen are pretty big. And I mean, you're looking at, most of the time you'll see studios and 1-bedrooms at retirement residences. Very rarely you'll see a 2-bedroom. Most places maybe have 1 or 2. They also will charge for a second occupant, and that's the meals and all the other services that that second occupant's getting. So what's usually included in those kind of base rent up there are 3 meals a day. Now, this is kind of usually included, it's not always. 3 meals a day, weekly housekeeping, 24-hour on-site healthcare support. So there's usually staff around, usually like a nurse or a PSW, 24/7. Activities and social programming. So they'll be running activities all through the day. And your utilities. So when you move into a retirement residence, you don't usually pay for water, hydro, heat. Those are usually included. One thing that might be extra is your phone, cable, internet. So when I gave you those base prices, those don't usually include care. So most places, you will be charged either a la carte. So when I say a la carte, each service or amount of time that a staff is helping you with care, they'll charge you for. Or other places will charge for a care package. Now, a la carte is nice if you're only needing a little bit of care, or if you're getting services from outside, if you're getting either the LIN services, so the Local Health Integration Network provides free home care if you qualify, or if you're paying for outside care. A la carte can work. If you are needing a lot of care, a la carte can add up really quick and can be quite a lot. And that's when, if you need more care, or if you're someone who likes to know how much you're going to pay every single month, having a care package is good. It's good for a lot of care, or knowing exactly how much it's going to cost. So with that, how do you compare retirement residences? Do they all offer the same thing? So no. And there's no mandate for what they have to be. In the Retirement Home Act, a retirement residence is a place with 6 or more adults who are 55 older and they are not family. So that leaves it very open to what kind of services they can provide. And so, you'll hear these are all kind of, so 2 words you'll hear: assisted living, memory care. So assisted living can be a lot of things. At one retirement home, assisted living could mean one thing. At another retirement home, it can be something completely different. So asking what their assisted living means doesn't sound dumb or anything. I always ask, what does your assisted living mean? A lot of the times, assisted living means that you have a care staff that is on your floor at all times. And that care staff is there to provide you with care, but also to monitor if you need something. So say if there's a fall or anything that comes up, they're there immediately. Memory care is another one. So memory care can mean a lot of things as well. So memory care, we often see a secure unit. So there's actually a locked door that you need either like an access card or a code to get out of that memory care area. And so that's actually to keep residents who maybe are wandering. So that's if they're just kind of walking around and they don't really know where they're going, or people who are actively trying to leave the building, keep them in the building. Usually that's what memory care means. Memory care also means that there's usually tailored activities for someone who is cognitively declining. Amenity spaces are very different at each place. The outdoor space is very different as well. The different services they offer, so whether there's a doctor on site, hearing people come in, a dentist on site, foot care, whether they come in, the social programming. So everything's very different from place to place. And that's why it's always important to kind of ask questions and get that information when you're touring or looking around. So then how do you compare these places if they're all different? You can check public reports. Public health will report on how their kitchen's doing as well as their nursing staff. The RHRA will report on if they're following compliance with the Retirement Home Act. You can speak to staff and residents. Before COVID, you could go into the building, sit and watch, have a meal, see how things were going. Now, post-COVID, it's online, all virtual tours. This doesn't mean when you do a virtual tour also, you can meet with the director of care and the general manager. So going beyond just that salesperson, they're paying a good salary to hype up their building, going beyond that and asking the other staff, right? Because that salesperson is going to be, they're going to tell you everything you want to hear. So let's go into what the difference between long-term care and retirement homes are. And we're going to go into long-term care next. So retirement residences, funding, most of them, there's no funding. Some are subsidized by the city. So you can apply through the city of Ottawa to have a spot in a subsidized residence. Long-term care is provincially funded. So our provincial government runs that. The fees. So when you're at a retirement home, you pay for both your care and accommodations. Where at long-term care, you pay for just accommodations. Your care levels at retirement residence vary greatly, as I just mentioned. At long-term care, you're going to see assisted living and memory care. Now, your accommodations, what do they look like? At a retirement residence, as I said, there's studios and one bedrooms, and they're often very apartment-like. They have a little kitchenette, you have a closet, you have a bathroom, you might have a living space and a bedroom space. Where at long-term care, you're looking at more, it looks more like a hospital room. You have a hospital bed. Of course, you can still bring in some items, some personal items, and you have a dresser, a side table, things like that, but it's a lot more hospital looking. Wait times in retirement residence, there's usually no wait times. Most of these places actually sit at about a 10% vacancy rate. Where at long-term care, we're looking at months to years wait. And I'll touch on what post-COVID looks like, or yeah, as we're getting into COVID, what the wait times look like for long-term care. So long-term care, we have about 27 in Ottawa. As I said, the province funds the service and care in these places, and then the person pays the accommodation meals. So we'll get into the fees, we'll get into what the accommodations look like, and then I'll talk to you guys about how to apply. So our fees, and I'm just going to say this also because I'm going to kind of rush through it just because of the timing. All this information is available online. If you go to the Ontario Long-Term Care website, you can see all this information. Even if you go to the Champlain Lynn website, all this information is available. So I'm not kind of sharing any secrets or anything. So the fees, these fees are set out by the province. They're standard, so you have your basic ward, your semi-private, and your private. Now, they did not increase rates last year because of COVID, and you can get subsidies. So if you cannot afford that basic amount, they will subsidize that whole amount for you if you qualify. Now with COVID, they're no longer doing basic wards. So basic wards were 4 people in a room. They made a rule, no, only 2 people in a room to help cut down the spread of COVID. So now it's mainly semi-privates and privates. But if you can't afford a semi-private, it will be at the cost of a basic ward. You'll get a semi-private now. Your accommodations, it will vary from place to place because these buildings, it just depends on when it was built. The year it was built, because there's been different regulations that have been put in as the years go on. So they do kind of feel a bit like a medical facility, whereas a retirement home, if anyone's ever been in one, it's quite different feeling. It feels like a luxurious, or it feels like an apartment complex almost, but with additional spaces, where this is more a medical facility feeling. Your furniture is provided. And then the other thing that they do is they classify beds. So you'll hear that also. You're not getting a room, you're getting a bed in long-term care. So they classify beds as A, B, C, or D. I think D's are almost all taken off out of it. I think you only have A, B, and C. And essentially it's how nice the room is. A and B are usually the newer facilities. I think when we say newer, we're looking at about 1996 or newer. So there are some buildings that are quite old, and they are trying to update all those older buildings so they come into more of the modern ones. So your application, this is the kind of biggest thing with the long-term care, is the application is controlled by your local health integration network. If anyone's ever encountered them, they are a phone number. There's a phone number you can call up, and you don't need a doctor's referral. You just call up the number. Be prepared to wait for a while. They don't necessarily answer on the first, second, or 100th ring, but they will answer, and you tell them your situation, and if they think it's necessary, they'll send in a case manager who will come in and assess. So you can actually call for someone else. You have to get that person's consent, though, for the assessment to be done. So you can call for yourself, or you can call for a friend or family, but that family member or friend has to consent. If they do the assessment, they say, okay, yeah, you would be a candidate for long-term care. You then get to pick 5 facilities to wait on their wait list. Wait times vary greatly from facility to facility, and it's actually publicly available what the wait times are. I have a copy of the list if anyone wants it, but it's as easy as a Google search as well. So with that, you're not going to necessarily get a bed as soon as you want it. Things don't line up perfectly like that. So there are strategies to kind of plan around long-term care. The first is pick 5. So pick 5 and pick them before you need it. So waiting till you go in the hospital to pick your 5 is not a good strategy, because when you're sitting in that hospital bed, your social worker at the hospital is trying to get you out of that bed as soon as possible. First, because COVID, they don't want you catching it in the hospital, but also they need that bed for someone else who is not just waiting for long-term care. And we actually hear about a lot of that in the news. And that's kind of a hot topic right now, is those people waiting in hospitals. And it's good to look at both perspectives, the social worker and also the person sitting in that bed waiting. So look at that wait list, see which ones have the shortest wait. So don't pick 5 facilities that have like a 5-year wait, because it will take a long time. Consider private versus basic. Usually there's a lot more availability in private, on private beds. And then have a retirement community as an alternative while you wait. So if you do know that you need assistance, going to a retirement community and just waiting for long-term care works, especially because at the retirement community, it's month-to-month lease. And again, at long-term care, you can bring in care. So if you can bring in a companion, do it. It can be very helpful, especially because long-term care, they're often short-staffed. So some quick updates with COVID. I'm gonna go quick. So with COVID, the housing market in Ottawa, I don't know if anyone's looked right now, is crazy. It's a seller's market, not a buyer's market. So if you are looking at purchasing, kind of think about that. Also, housing is considered an essential service, so you can still look and still move during COVID. Retirement homes, still accepting new residents. Everything's usually done virtually. And actually, most retirement homes are now fully vaccinated. So all residents are vaccinated. Ottawa Public Health told me today that new people moving in will also be vaccinated. So long-term care, this is what's taken a big hit, is their wait list. So what happened is, if a long-term care facility is an outbreak, so that means they have an active COVID case, they can't accept new people. So because of that, and because there's been so many outbreaks, their wait times have increased drastically. Also, we said those basic wards are now turned into semi-private, so they have half the number of beds they used to. But also, so long-term care are fully vaccinated as well. But the wait times are a lot bigger now. So having a better strategy is more important than ever. So just some quick things to consider. Just planning ahead so you can help reduce that personal stress, and knowing what your goals are and what you want for yourself, and letting others know what your goals are so they can make informed decisions. Communicating constructively. Don't shut someone off because they want to help you. Accept that help. Your physician can be pretty helpful as well, giving you guidance. And because, as I mentioned, I'm an exercise physiologist, start exercising. I'm always a big advocate for movement and exercise. And then learning from your emotions, following your emotions, and kind of looking within and seeing what you want from yourself. So thank you so much. I know I kind of breezed through